Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for a war for our common future. Today we draw a line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism.
Ya, Shalom teman-teman semua dimanapun kita berada saat ini. Kiranya kita semua tetap berada dalam keadaan sehat dan apapun yang merupakan aktivitas kita sepanjang hari ini, kiranya Tuhan Yesus memberkati. Dan kembali berjumpa lagi di channel kita ini, yaitu Zimayan Yasin. Terima kasih buat teman-teman semua dan juga para sahabat yang sudah mendukung perkembangan channel ini dengan setia. Dan kiranya kita tetap menggunakannya untuk menjadi berkat bagi semua orang. Nah teman-teman, pada video kali ini saya membagikan kepada kita semua pesan tegas dari Netanyahu, di mana dia menegaskan kepada dunia bahwa perang tidak akan bisa berhenti sebelum Hamas itu diselesaikan. Bahkan dia memberikan jawaban terhadap kencaman dari beberapa negara. Dia menjawab dengan firman Tuhan, mengatakan bahwa ada waktunya damai dan ada waktunya berperang. Sekarang waktunya adalah berperang, kata Netanyahu. Jadi mari kita simak videonya yang berikut ini.
Until recently, many believed that the promise of progress in the 21st century would enable us to move beyond the barbaric horrors of the past towards a better and brilliant future. Many believed that we could go about our comfortable lives and that evil will simply pass us by. It will not. The horrors that Hamas perpetrated on October 7th remind us that we will not realize the promise of a better future unless we, the civilized world, are willing to fight the barbarians. Because the barbarians are willing to fight us. And their goal is clear. Shatter that promising future. Destroy all that we cherish. And usher in a world of fear and darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a turning point. A turning point for leaders and nations. It is time for all of us to decide if we are willing to fight for a future of hope and promise, or surrender to tyranny and terror. Now rest assured, Israel will fight. Since October 7th, Israel has been at war. Israel did not start this war. Israel did not want this war. But Israel will win this war. Hamas launched this war by perpetrating the worst savagery our people have seen since the Holocaust. Hamas murdered children in front of their parents, murdered parents in front of their children. They burned people alive. They raped women. They beheaded men. They tortured Holocaust survivors. They kidnapped babies. They committed the most horrific crimes imaginable. And they're part of the axis of evil that Iran has formed, an axis of terror that works by arming, training, and financing Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and other terror proxies throughout the Middle East and beyond the Middle East. In fighting Hamas and the Iranian axis of terror, Israel is fighting the enemies of civilization itself. Victory over these enemies begins with moral clarity. It begins with knowing the difference between good and evil, between right and wrong. It means making a moral distinction between the deliberate murder of the innocent and the unintentional casualties that accompany every legitimate war, even the most just war. It means holding Hamas responsible for the double war crime it commits every day by deliberately targeting Israeli civilians while deliberately using Palestinian civilians as human shields. It means making clear that the use of human shields is not only an immoral tactic of terror, but also an ineffective one. Because as long as Hamas's use of Palestinian human shields result in the international community blaming Israel, Hamas will continue to use it as a tool of terror, and so will others. Hamas will continue to use the basements in Gaza's hospitals as the command posts of its vast terror tunnel network. It will continue to use mosques as fortified military positions and weapon depots. It will continue to steal fuel and humanitarian assistance from UN facilities. While Israel is doing everything to get Palestinians civilians out of harm's way, Hamas is doing everything to keep Palestinian civilians in harm's way. Israel urges Palestinian civilians to leave the areas of armed conflict, while Hamas prevents those civilians from leaving those areas at gunpoint. Hamas is also preventing foreign nationals from leaving Gaza altogether. And most despicably, Hamas is holding over 200 Israeli hostages, including 33 children, holding them, terrorizing them, keeping them as hostages. Every civilized nation should stand with Israel in demanding that these hostages be freed immediately and freed unconditionally. I want to make clear Israel's position regarding a ceasefire. Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th. Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war, a war for our common future. Today we draw a line between the forces of civilization and the forces of barbarism. It is a time for everyone to decide where they stand. Israel will stand against the forces of barbarism until victory. I hope and pray that civilized nations everywhere will back this fight, because Israel's fight is your fight. Because if Hamas and Iran's axis of evil win, you will be their next target. That's why Israel's victory will be your victory. But make no mistake, regardless of who stands with Israel, Israel will fight until this battle is won, and Israel will prevail. May God bless Israel, and may God bless all those who stand with Israel.
Jadi itu saja videonya yang kita dengar teman-teman ya. Kiranya ini menjadi satu berita atau kabar yang perlu kita doakan supaya terjadi perdamaian di Timur Tengah sana. Apalagi ini konflik yang memakan banyak korban jiwa. Dan seperti apa yang disampaikan oleh Netanyahu, bahwa sekalipun ada banyak korban jiwa yang berjatuhan, tetapi ada satu harapan ke depan untuk bisa datangnya kedamaian itu sendiri. Dan kita percaya bahwa habis gelap pasti terbit terang teman-teman ya. Jadi sekarang mereka sedang menghadapi yang namanya peperangan yang luar biasa, yang sangat mengerikan, karena dia katakan tadi bahwa memang perbuatan Hamas, tindakan Hamas itu merupakan perbuatan yang sangat mengerikan sekali, yang membuat menderita baik warga Palestina maupun warga sipil Israel. Jadi itu yang harus mereka hentikan. Nah, jadi artinya kalau disuruh untuk gencatan senjata, jadi itu artinya mereka menyerah kepada teroris. Dan dia berkata bahwa kami Israel tidak akan pernah menyerah dan tidak pernah ada yang namanya gencatan senjata. Jadi itu saja yang perlu saya sampaikan. Biarlah kita tetap mendoakan dan kiranya Tuhan memberikan waktu yang tepat untuk kedamaian antara Palestina dan Israel. Demikian yang saya sampaikan, kiranya Tuhan Yesus memberkati kita semua. Shalom.